taxing the mind like a puzzle unsolved, reading the war where the meaning devolved, the cryptic path through the haze of the lore. Beauty fades, but wisdom's the score. Age before beauty, its clarity's reign. Explain the story, don't make it arcane. Truth in the lines where simplicity shines. A battle of wits in these taxing confines. Interpret the shadows, but what do they say? Explain it outright, don't lead us astray. A mirror of words that distorts as it bends, lost in translation where meaning descends. Age before beauty, its clarity's reign. Explain the story, don't make it arcane. Truth in the lines where simplicity shines. A battle of wits in these taxing confines. Let the clouds part where the sun meets the page. Turn the key softly and step off the stage. The wars of the word where the sharp minds collide. Interpret or explain, the choice won't hide. Age is the beacon where wisdom align. Beauty's a fleeting mask time redesigns. Through the trenches of thought where battles are fought. Clarity conquers what beauty forgot. Interpret the shadows, but what do they say? Explain it outright, don't lead us astray. A mirror of words that distorts as it bends, lost in translation where meaning descends. Let the clouds part where the sun meets the page. Turn the key softly and step off the stage. The wars of the word where the sharp minds collide. Interpret or explain, the choice won't hide. Let the clouds part where the sun meets the page. Turn the key softly and step off the stage. The wars of the word where the sharp minds collide. Interpret or explain, the choice won't hide. Let the clouds part where the sun meets the page. Turn the key softly and step off the stage. The wars of the word where the sharp minds collide. Interpret or explain, the choice won't hide. Let the clouds part where the sun meets the page. Turn the key softly and step off the stage. The wars of the word where the sharp minds collide. Interpret or explain, the choice won't hide. Age is the beacon where wisdom aligns. Beauty's a fleeting mask time redesigns. Through the trenches of thought where battles are fought. Clarity conquers what beauty forgot. Age is the beacon where wisdom aligns. Beauty's a fleeting mask time redesigns. Through the trenches of thought where battles are fought. Clarity conquers what beauty forgot.
Taxing the readability wars through age before beauty. Explainability. Interpretability. Abstract. This paper proposes a novel approach to the readability wars in repetitive redundancy learning by prioritizing explainability over interpretability. We debate that focusing solely on interpretable models, where the inner workings are easily understood by humans, can hinder progress. Instead, the paper champions explainability, where all models are accompanied by diminishing returns for their outputs, even if the internal workings remain opaque. This approach, termed age before beauty explainability interpretability, is demonstrably effective through structure or format focusing on syntax policy syntax code replace with specific domain. The paper concludes by asking for a shift in the field's priorities towards explainability. Ensuring that even complex models can be effectively understood and trusted by users, no matter the clarity or fluency. Lay summary, This paper argues for a new way of thinking about how easy it is to understand models, especially in the field of repetitive learning. The authors say that focusing too much on making models easy to understand can slow down progress. Instead, they believe it's more important to be able to explain what a model is doing, even if the inner workings are still mysterious. They call this approach age before beauty, and they show how it works in a study of tax law. The paper ends by calling for the field to focus more on explanation, so that people can trust even complex models. Keywords: explainability versus interpretability, repetitive redundancy learning, age before beauty, trustworthy AI, model complexity, linguistic retaining. Taxing the readability wars through age before beauty, explainability, interpretability. The studies I've seen about readability and legibility tend to focus on a specific set of metrics: size, not just the point size, but things like the size of the lowercase letters as a proportion of the overall letter height, and line length. People simply can't read really small typeset in really long lines. Michael B. Rudd. The Bourbaki dangerous bend symbol, also known as the caution symbol, is a mathematical notation used to warn readers. It looks like a zigzag line inside a diamond, resembling a road warning sign for a dangerous bend. You can find it by searching for caution sign Unicode character. Introduced by the Nicholas Bourbaki group of mathematicians for their math textbooks. It serves as a flag in the text, appearing in the margins to indicate a passage that might be tricky to understand on the first go. This could be due to a complex argument, subtle concept, or a part prone to common mistakes. In essence, it's a heads up for readers to pay close attention and proceed with caution. Interestingly, the concept of the Bourbaki dangerous bend symbol has found its way outside of mathematics. The musical band 21 Pilots references it in their song Overcompensate, even drawing connections to the band's broader themes. Readability wars refers to a movement that emerged in the mid-20th century, advocating for clearer and more accessible writing. Back in the day, a lot of writing, especially academic and official documents, were dense and technical. This made them hard to understand for most people. People like Rudolf Flesch and Robert Gunning started pushing back. They argued that writing should be clear, concise, and easy for the intended audience to grasp. They developed readability formulas to measure the complexity of writing and advocated for using simpler words, shorter sentences, and active voice. The readability movement made a big difference. It led to a shift in writing style, with a focus on plain language that's easier for everyone to understand. You see this in things like user manuals, government documents, and even some academic writing today. Here's an analogy: imagine a delicious meal served on a fancy plate with a tiny fork. Linguists with an interest in applied linguistics saw the value of clear communication. They provided scientific backing to the readability movement by developing readability formulas. These formulas analyzed factors like sentence length, word difficulty, and passive voice to assess the complexity of a text. Linguists emphasized the importance of considering the audience when crafting a message. They argued that effective communication requires tailoring language to the reader's level of understanding. Some linguists worried that the readability movement could lead to a dumbing down of language. They argued that complex ideas require complex language, and that a focus on simplicity could sacrifice the richness and precision of expression. They also raised concerns that readability formulas might oversimplify the complexities of language. Linguistics recognizes the nuances of language use. A single word can have different meanings depending on context. Formulas might not always capture these subtleties. The readability wars were a fruitful debate between linguists and others concerned with clear communication. The readability wars were about making sure the food information is accessible and enjoyable for everyone, not just those with special utensils, advanced vocabulary. Linguistic ease refers to how effortless it is to understand and process language, either spoken or written. It's basically how easy it is for your brain to make sense of the words and grammar being used. Easier language can hold the audience's attention better. They're not struggling to understand the words, so they can focus on the message itself. However, linguistic ease doesn't always mean dumbing things down. There are times when complex ideas require more complex language to be expressed accurately. The key is to find the right balance between clarity and precision. Think of language as a path. A smooth, well-maintained path with clear signage is easy to navigate. A path with overgrown bushes, confusing signs, and uneven terrain is difficult to follow. Linguistic ease is about creating that smooth path for your audience. Reading comprehension is all about understanding what you read. It's like solving a puzzle where the pieces are words and sentences, and the completed picture is the overall meaning of the text. This involves figuring out the literal meaning of words and sentences, but also goes deeper to understand the author's purpose, main ideas, and supporting details. Reading cohesion is like a detective following clues in a well-written story. It's about how the author uses language to create a smooth and connected text, making it easier for you, the reader, to follow their train of thought and grasp the overall meaning. Reading cohesion is like a detective following clues in a well-written story. It's about how the author uses language to create a smooth and connected text, making it easier for you, the reader, to follow their train of thought. Diminishing returns refers to the idea that adding more and more effort to simplify a text eventually yields diminishing returns. In other words, there's a point where making things simpler doesn't actually improve readability much further. Imagine explaining something complex to a child. You can simplify your language, but if you keep dumbing it down, they might lose the overall message. The point of diminishing returns is different for each reader. A child might need simpler explanations than an adult for the same topic. A well-written text can adapt its complexity to the target audience without sacrificing clarity or accuracy. Sometimes, complex words or sentence structures are necessary to convey an idea precisely. Dumbing something down too much can backfire if it leads to misunderstandings. Repetition is the act of saying or doing something again, exactly, or very similarly. It's a continuous act. You can repeat something a few times, many times, or constantly. Repetition doesn't necessarily convey additional meaning. It can be for emphasis, clarification, or simply a habit. Semantic and pragmatic redundancy, in this context, refers to using more words or information than strictly necessary to convey the meaning. It can be semantic meaning related or pragmatic related to how language is used in context. Semantic redundancy involves using synonyms or rephrasing to clarify meaning. Pragmatic redundancy involves using additional information that's implied by the context, but stated explicitly for emphasis, politeness, or other reasons. Redundancy is discrete. It either exists or doesn't, depending on the specific words used and the context. You can't be a little bit redundant. Repetition is like playing a single note on a piano repeatedly. The sound continues for a certain duration. Semantic redundancy is like playing the same note but in a different octave for emphasis. Pragmatic redundancy is like playing a simple melody and then explaining each note you just played. The seeds of pragmatic language skills are sown very early in childhood, even before a child utters their first words. First year, this is all about laying the foundation. Babies use cries, coos, gestures, and facial expressions to communicate needs and desires. They start to understand simple turn-taking through peekaboo or similar games. Second year, toddlers begin using single words and short phrases to express themselves. They understand and follow simple social rules like greetings and no. They might even start using gestures like pointing to indicate something they want. Third year, children start using language for different purposes, like requesting, informing, and greeting. They show an understanding of who they're talking to by adjusting their vocabulary and tone. Think mama vs. teacher. They even start engaging in simple back and forth conversations. Simple exploration. Early infancy, a baby might bat at a hanging mobile, causing it to sway. They might then repeat the action, observing the effect with delight. This is a very basic understanding of cause and effect. Experimentation. Mid-infancy, as children get older around 8 to 18 months, they become more deliberate in their play. They might drop a spoon repeatedly to hear the clatter, or bang on a pot to see what sound it makes. This repetitive play allows them to solidify the cause and effect relationship. Prediction and control. Toddlerhood, toddlers around 18 months and beyond start to anticipate the consequences of their actions. They might push a button on a toy, knowing it will play a sound. This is a crucial stage where they learn a sense of control over their environment. An inessential cause and effect describes a situation where a cause leads to an effect, but removing the cause wouldn't necessarily prevent the effect from happening altogether. The NICID studies on reading acquisition. The National Institute of Child Health and Human Development (NICID) has funded several studies investigating the cognitive processes underlying reading difficulties, including late reading development. You can find their publications on their website https://www.nichd.nih.gov. Health topics. Reading. The readability of a sentence or passage that mentions an umbrella depends on the overall difficulty of the writing. For example, she held the red umbrella high is easy to read, but the dilapidated, crimson canopy provided meager protection from the unrelenting deluge is more complex. Pragmatic fluency is a concept that hasn't been fully defined or operationalized in the field of computational linguistics. It likely refers to the ability of a language model to not only generate fluent text, but also text that is relevant and useful in a specific context. There isn't a single metric to quantify pragmatic fluency, but here's an example that demonstrates how a large language model can be used to generate different creative text formats, potentially contributing to pragmatic fluency. The beauty of nature. This feature is not currently available, but future large language models might be able to generate creative text formats like poems, code, or musical pieces based on this prompt. Semantic richness, sigma I equals 1 n pii. Semantic clarity, 1 n sigma I equals 1 n max ppi. Semantic noise, n sigma I equals 1 n pip 4 sigma I equals 1 n pip 22. Advanced semantic or semantic features influence on text readability was pioneered by Bruce W. Lee during his study at the University of Pennsylvania, in 2021. Whilst introducing his features hybridization method, he also explored handcrafted advanced semantic features which aim to measure the amount of knowledge contained in a given text. Semantic readability studies go beyond the surface features of a text and delve into how the meaning itself affects how easy it is to understand. Imagine a delicious meal. The presentation sentence length, vocabulary is important, but so is the quality of the ingredients, ideas and their organization that determine how enjoyable it is to eat. Read. The way a meal is presented can affect your experience. Semantic readability examines how information is presented within a text. Is the main idea clear? Are supporting arguments well organized? A logical structure makes it easier for the reader to follow the author's train of thought and understand the overall message. Historical theories. Early psychologists like Ernst Kretschmer proposed connections between body types and personality. For example, a more muscular build might be associated with outgoing personalities, while a slender build might be linked to introversion. Modern research, while these historical theories are no longer fully accepted, there's ongoing research on how facial features and body language might offer clues about personality traits. For instance, studies suggest facial symmetry might correlate with extroversion. Important caveats: it's crucial to remember these are just correlations, not hard and fast rules. Many factors influence personality, and appearance alone cannot definitively determine someone's nature. Imagine having a guide signaling devices explain the different courses of a meal. Studies explore how authors use language cues to guide readers. These cues can include transition words, however, therefore, headings, and formatting to highlight key points, all helping readers navigate the text. Traditional formulas considered sentence length and vocabulary, but semantic research helps develop formulas that consider idea complexity as well. Educators can create engaging learning materials by understanding how semantic factors influence a student's ability to learn the topic. Researchers can use semantic analysis to assess the difficulty level of a text for different audiences, ensuring the information is presented at an appropriate level. Sentiment readability combines two key concepts: sentiment analysis and reading comprehension. It essentially asks the question, can I easily understand the sentiment positive, negative, neutral being expressed in a text many times? The nuance of sentiment of a text is crucial for understanding the full message, including verbal readability. Second, language acquisition. Studies have used closed deletion tests longitudinally to track the development of vocabulary knowledge and reading comprehension in learners acquiring a new language. By administering the test at regular intervals, researchers can monitor progress in understanding grammatical structures, filling in missing words based on context, and overall grasp of the new language. Self-report questionnaires are the most common tools. You answer questions that describe your typical behaviors, preferences, and feelings. Popular examples include the Big Five Inventory BFI, a short, easy-to-understand questionnaire that measures the 5 core personality traits. Ocean Myers-Briggs Type Indicator MBTI categorizes personalities into 16 types based on preferences, e.g. introverted versus extroverted. While informative, MBTI is less widely used in research compared to the Big Five. Readability questions are usually phrased in clear, everyday language, making them easy to understand and complete. Situational judgment tests present you with hypothetical work scenarios and ask you to choose the best course of action. They assess how your personality traits might influence your behavior in real-life situations. Readability scenarios are typically written in clear language that reflects real-world situations. Cometrics is a software program that uses computational methods to analyze text based on various psycholinguistic factors. By meticulously analyzing these elements, Cometrics paints a detailed portrait of a text's psycholinguistic profile. The Journal of Learning Disabilities. This academic journal frequently publishes research on reading difficulties, including late reading development. You can search their archives for relevant articles using keywords like late reading development, adolescent reading difficulties, or remediation for struggling readers. Illiterate semantics is a term that combines illiteracy, the inability to read or write, with semantics, the aspect of language concerned with meaning. While the literal meaning suggests understanding the meaning of language without being able to read or write it, this isn't quite possible. Humans have a natural ability to acquire language, including understanding spoken words and their meanings, even without formal reading or writing skills. Infants begin to understand language long before they can read. Someone who is illiterate can still grasp the meaning of spoken words and gestures. Illiterate semantics could figuratively refer to understanding meaning conveyed through non-written methods, like sign language, gestures, or symbols. People who are illiterate can still be highly skilled communicators using these alternative methods. Even without formal reading skills, people can often understand the meaning of spoken language by using context clues, such as the situation, the speaker's tone of voice, and the surrounding conversation. The Texas Reading Initiative, this large-scale program aimed to improve reading outcomes for students struggling with reading in later elementary grades 3rd to 5th. Research associated with the initiative explored factors impacting late reading development and the effectiveness of interventions. K1 to 12 readability refers to the difficulty level of text appropriate for children in kindergarten K through 12th grade, grade 12. K2, short, simple sentences with familiar words. Focus on high-frequency sight words and basic sentence structures. 3 to 5, more complex sentences with a wider vocabulary. Begin introducing compound sentences and basic punctuation. 6 to 8, sentences can be longer and more complex. Use transition words to connect ideas. Introduce figurative language and descriptive vocabulary. 9 to 12, complex sentence structures with a rich vocabulary. Focus on academic vocabulary and critical thinking skills. The Gunning-Fogg Index is a readability test designed to estimate the educational background someone would need to understand a piece of writing on the first try. It provides a single score that reflects the text's complexity. It calculates the average number of words in each sentence. It counts the number of words with 3 or more syllables, excluding some exceptions like proper nouns. The more complex words, the higher the score. Flesch-Kincaid grade level equals 0.39 ASL plus 11.8 AL, 15.59. The Flesch-Kincaid grade level is a readability formula that estimates the U.S. grade level needed to understand a text comfortably. This is the average number of words per sentence in the text. And this is the average number of syllables per word in the text. 90 to 100, easily understood by an average 5th grader. 70 to 80, considered standard difficulty, suitable for most adults. 50 to 60, fairly difficult, appropriate for college students. 30 to 50, difficult, challenging for most adults. Below 30, very difficult, likely requiring a postgraduate degree for comprehension. In addition, Junfeng pioneered the cognitively motivated features, mostly lexical, in 2009. The cognitively motivated features were originally designed for adults with intellectual disability, but was proved to improve readability assessment accuracy in general. Cognitively motivated features, in combination with a logistic regression model, can correct the average error of Flesch-Kincaid grade level by more than 70%. The newly discovered features by Feng include, number of lexical chains in document. Average number of unique entities per sentence. Average number of entity mentions per sentence. Total number of unique entities in document. Total number of entity mentions in document. Average lexical chain length. Average lexical chain span. The type token ratio is one of the features that are often used to capture the lexical richness, which is a measure of vocabulary range and diversity. To measure the lexical difficulty of a word, the relative frequency of the word in a representative corpus like the corpus of contemporary American English COCA is often used. Average number of syllables per word. Out of vocabulary rate, in comparison to the full corpus. Type token ratio, the ratio of unique terms to total terms observed. Ratio of function words, in comparison to the full corpus. Ratio of pronouns, in comparison to the full corpus. Language model perplexity, comparing the text to generic or genre-specific models. Syntax policy outlines the rules and guidelines that govern how something should be written or constructed. It acts as a set of principles for achieving a specific structure. Syntax code is the actual implementation of those rules. It's the concrete representation of the syntax policy, often written in a specific language or format. Cyclomatic complexity equals E plus M, P plus 1. Syntactic complexity is correlated with longer processing times in text comprehension. It is common to use a rich set of these syntactic features to predict the readability of a text. The more advanced variants of syntactic readability features are frequently computed from parse tree. Emily Pitler University of Pennsylvania and Annenkova University of Pennsylvania are considered pioneers in evaluating the parse tree syntactic features and making it widely used in readability assessment. Some examples include average sentence length, average parse tree height, average number of noun phrases per sentence, average number of verb phrases per sentence. Cyclomatic complexity measures the number of independent paths through a section of code. A higher cyclomatic complexity indicates more decision points like if statements, loops, and potentially more complex logic. It's a quantitative metric calculated using formulas based on code structure. Elif statements, short for else if, are a control flow statement used in many programming languages. The SMOG index boils down a text's difficulty to a number, indicating the years of education likely needed to understand it. Grab a chunk of your text, ideally at least 30 sentences long. This is like taking a sample of your writing. Count the words with 3 or more syllables in your sample. These are the polysyllabic words, the long ones that might slow readers down. Divide the total number of polysyllables by the number of sentences to find the average number of polysyllables per sentence. Think of it as averaging the number of long words in each sentence. Plug that average number, let's call it P, into this formula, square root of P plus 13 plus 3.0. Don't worry about memorizing it, the important part is P. The result, rounded to a whole number, is your SMOG grade. The higher the grade, the harder the text is supposed to be. SDS equals W plus MTX 100. The Golub Syntactic Density Score SDS is a readability formula designed to assess the syntactic complexity of written text. Focuses on the structure and complexity of sentences rather than just vocabulary difficulty. The idea is that longer, more intricate sentences are generally harder to understand than shorter, simpler ones. A T-unit terminal unit is a complete sentence, including any independent clauses and dependent clauses. Each T-unit earns 1 point. M words are modifiers, adverbs, adjectives that come before the main verb in a clause. Each M word earns 1 point. W words are subordinating conjunctions because, although, etc. that introduce dependent clauses. Each W word earns 3 points. S words are simple verbs past, present, or future tense with no helping verbs. They don't earn any points. The Woodcock-Johnson Psychoeducational Battery Revised WJR, this comprehensive assessment tool includes subtests that measure reading fluency and comprehension. It's often used to identify and diagnose late readers in older children and adults. Interpretability logistic regression models are relatively easy to interpret, allowing you to understand which features are most influential in predicting readability. Relatively simple to implement compared to deep learning models, logistic regression is easier to set up and train. Limited feature handling logistic regression might not be as effective as complex models in capturing subtle nuances in text that influence readability. Linear relationships logistic regression assumes a linear relationship between features and readability, which might not always be the case. A close deletion test, also sometimes called a close procedure or a gap fill exercise, is a method for assessing reading comprehension and vocabulary knowledge. It works by taking a passage of text and removing certain words, typically at regular intervals or based on specific criteria. The reader's task is to then fill in the missing words, demonstrating their understanding of the context and the language used. The skipgram model is primarily designed to capture semantics, which refers to the meaning and relationships between words, but it has a limited ability to capture syntax, which refers to the grammatical structure and word order in a sentence. The skipgram model focuses on predicting surrounding words' context based on a target word. This helps it learn semantic relationships between words that often appear together. The model considers words within a specific window around a target word. This window size limits its ability to capture long-range dependencies in a sentence that define grammatical structure. Frequently occurring function words like prepositions, conjunctions, and articles often have consistent syntactic roles. By learning their semantic relationships with surrounding words, the model might implicitly capture some syntactic information. Within the window size, the relative position of context words might provide some clues about their syntactic roles. For example, a verb might be more likely to be followed by a noun object within a shorter distance compared to an adjective. Data-driven approaches to readability analysis for languages other than English has been plagued by a scarcity of suitable corpora. Often, relevant corpora consist only of easy-to-read texts with no rank information or empirical readability scores, making only binary approaches, such as classification, applicable. We propose a Bayesian, latent variable, approach to get the most out of these kinds of corpora. In this paper we present results on using such a model for readability ranking. The model is evaluated on a preliminary corpus of ranked student texts with encouraging results. We also assess the model by showing that it performs readability classification on PAR with a state-of-the-art classifier while at the same being transparent enough to allow more sophisticated interpretations. Implicit readability ranking using the latent variable of a Bayesian probit model 2016. Syntactic n-grams refer to sequences of n-words bigrams, trigrams that are analyzed based on their grammatical role in a sentence. They can be used to study how the brain processes word order and sentence structure. They are sequences of words similar to regular n-grams but defined by their relationships in a sentence's structure, not just their order. Imagine them as following a map of the sentence's grammar dependency or constituent trees rather than just going left to right. An authorship attribution identifying who wrote a text based on their syntactic style. Information retrieval finding relevant documents by analyzing their grammatical structure. Part of speech focus on the sequence of grammatical categories, e.g. noun, verb, adjective in a sentence, not the specific words. Documents and queries are represented as vectors in a high-dimensional space. Each corresponds to a unique term, word or phrase in the vocabulary of all documents being analyzed. Each dimension represents the weight or importance of that term for a particular document or query. Monitoring individual progress, readability scores from datasets like the Common Lit Readability Prize can be used to track an individual's reading development over time by measuring their performance on texts with increasing difficulty levels at different points in their education. The longest common string LCS refers to the longest sequence of characters that appears identically in two or more strings. It's a fundamental concept in computer science, particularly in string manipulation algorithms and applications like data deduplication. LCS algorithms can identify identical data chunks within a large dataset. This helps eliminate redundant storage and improve storage efficiency. LCS algorithms can be used to compare different versions of code and identify the changes made between them. LCS requires the characters to appear in the same order, while LC subsequence allows characters to be rearranged as long as they are present in both strings. Minhash is a technique used in computer science and data mining for estimating the similarity between sets quickly. It's particularly useful for dealing with large datasets where directly comparing every element would be computationally expensive. Minhash uses a probabilistic approach to estimate the similarity between sets. Good Turing discounting. This method adjusts the probability of n-grams seen only once singletons based on the number of n-grams seen twice doubletons. Witten-Bell discounting, similar to Good Turing, but with a more sophisticated adjustment based on the frequency of n-grams with different counts. Lidstone smoothing. This technique adds a fixed discount to all n-gram counts and redistributes the mass proportionally. Data sparsity. When training a language model on a corpus, you'll inevitably encounter words or phrases n-grams that haven't been seen before. Unseen n-grams. Predicting probabilities for these unseen n-grams is crucial for generating realistic and coherent text. Linear interpolation mixing models combines the probabilities estimated from different n-gram models: unigram, bigram, trigram, etc. Using weights. The weights determine the influence of each model. It's a simple and effective way to leverage information from lower-order models. Unigram helps with unseen bigrams, etc. These techniques address the issue that assigning zero probability to unseen n-grams makes language modeling impractical. They redistribute probability mass from seen n-grams to unseen ones. Back-off models combine higher-order n-grams with lower-order ones in a hierarchical fashion. When a higher-order n-gram trigram is unseen, the model backs off to a lower-order model bigram or unigram that might have seen a similar context. NLTK Python, the natural language toolkit NLTK library, offers an Nizrny-probdist class that allows you to estimate probabilities using Nizrny smoothing. You'll need to train the model on your n-gram data before using it for probability estimation. KenLM. Various languages. KenLM is a high-performance language modeling toolkit with support for Nizrny smoothing. It offers more advanced features but might have a steeper learning curve. Nizrny smoothing is a technique used in natural language processing (NLP) to estimate the probability of n-gram sequences of words in a document. It's particularly useful when dealing with unseen n-grams, which are n-grams that never appeared in the training data. Traditional methods like maximum likelihood estimation (MLE) assign a probability of 0 to unseen n-grams. This is unrealistic because there are always new combinations of words possible in language. Nizrny smoothing addresses this by using a technique called absolute discounting. It subtracts a fixed value from the counts of observed n-grams. This freed up probability mass is then distributed among all possible n-grams, including unseen ones. Nizrny smoothing also incorporates information from lower-order n-grams like unigrams and bigrams to improve the estimation for higher-order n-grams. This makes it more effective than simply relying on raw counts. Unlike some smoothing techniques, Nizrny works well for all n-gram orders. Honestop English Dataset Papers with Code. This corpus consists of 189 texts, each in 3 versions, 567 in total. It's useful for applications like automatic readability assessment and automatic text simplification. Scroll Readability Dataset Papers with Code. This dataset is interesting because it contains scroll interactions of 598 participants reading advanced and elementary texts from the Honestop English corpus. This data can be used to study the relationship between readability and user behavior. ESL English as a Second Language standards provide a framework for educators to guide the instruction and assessment of English language learners (ELs). These standards outline the expected English language proficiency that ELs should achieve at different stages of their learning journey. While English enjoys widespread use as a global language, it's not without its downsides. Many English words have multiple meanings depending on the context. This ambiguity can be a source of confusion and make it difficult to interpret the intended meaning, especially in writing. The shift between informal and formal registers in English can be challenging, particularly for learners who may not be familiar with the appropriate usage in different contexts. The prevalence of English can reinforce an ethnocentric view, where English-speaking cultures are seen as superior. This can lead to a lack of appreciation for other cultures and ways of thinking. Studies have shown a positive correlation between text readability and student reading comprehension. This suggests that students generally perform better when reading texts that are appropriately challenging for their reading level. Research also highlights the importance of instructional strategies that support students' decoding skills, vocabulary development, and comprehension strategies, regardless of the specific text readability level. Morphology, the study of word structure, has a complex relationship with readability. While it doesn't directly determine how easy a text is to understand, it can influence difficulty in several ways. Breaking down words into their constituent morphemes. In the context of recurrent neural networks (RNNs) for language processing, recurrent morphology-related data points can refer to capture morphological relationships within sequences of words. This approach leverages the recurrent nature of RNNs to capture morphological relationships within sequences of words. The RNN processes words in a sequence, considering the previous words and their morphology. The internal state of the network reflects the accumulated information about morphology across the sequence. This allows the RNN to learn how morphological features in one word influence the meaning of subsequent words. Collocation refers to the way words tend to go together naturally in a language. These are groupings of two or more words that are frequently used together and sound natural to native speakers. In the field of explainable artificial intelligence (XAI), explainability models are a set of techniques that help us understand the inner workings of machine learning models, particularly complex ones. These models don't necessarily make the original model more interpretable on its own, but rather provide us with insights into how the original model arrives at its predictions. Morphological features of words, prefixes, suffixes, etc., can be incorporated as input data for explainability models. This can be particularly useful for understanding models that deal with text data. For instance, if a model predicts sentiment of a sentence, analyzing the presence of negative prefixes like un or positive suffixes like full could help explain the model's reasoning. By examining how a model treats words with different morphology, we can potentially identify biases. For example, a model might misinterpret slang or informal language due to a lack of understanding of morphology. Spacing effect. Research suggests that spaced repetition, revisiting information at increasing intervals, can be more effective for long-term learning compared to cramming information all at once. Variability in learning styles. Students learn best through a variety of instructional methods. Fitting redundancy that caters to different learning styles might benefit long-term knowledge retention for a wider range of students. Repetitive redundancy learning isn't a standard term in machine learning or linguistics. Overfitting due to redundant information is the scenario occurs when a machine learning model is exposed to training data containing a high degree of repetitive redundancy. The training data might have features or examples that convey the same information in multiple ways. The model might become overly reliant on these redundant patterns in the training data. This can lead to overfitting, where the model performs well on the training data but fails to generalize well to unseen data that doesn't exhibit the same redundancies. The model might be able to leverage the presence of redundancy as a cue to identify important information. By encountering redundant examples during training, the model might become more robust to variations in phrasing or word choice. This can improve its ability to generalize to unseen data. Regularization techniques in machine learning can help prevent models from becoming overly reliant on specific patterns in the data, including redundant information. Word2Vec, a popular word embedding technique that is agnostic to morphology. Task-agnostic morphology evolution TAME, a research project exploring the evolution of morphology in language agents without predefined tasks. Agnostic morphology refers to NLP models that don't explicitly consider morphological features of words, prefixes, suffixes, etc. when processing language. These models might rely on simpler representations like word embeddings or character-level information. Can be computationally simpler and faster, especially for large data sets. May be more robust to variations in morphology across languages. May generalize better to unseen words not encountered during training. Task-agnostic morphology evolution is a specific research area in NLP that focuses on evolving the morphology of agents within a simulated environment, without any predefined task or reward signal. The idea is to see if agents can develop their own communication system with meaningful morphology through exploration and interaction. Provides insights into how language might emerge organically without human intervention. Can potentially lead to the development of more robust and adaptable language models. Requires sophisticated simulation environments and large computational resources. The resulting morphology might not necessarily resemble human languages. Metaprogramming techniques allow code to manipulate its own structure. While not directly morphological, it shares the concept of code manipulating code, similar to how morphology deals with how words are formed and modified. Source code readability is a crucial aspect of software development. Well-written code is easier to understand, maintain, and modify, saving time and effort for both the original developer and anyone who needs to work on the code base in the future. Explain complex logic by adding clear and concise comments to explain non-obvious code sections or complex algorithms. Document function and class functionalities clearly, especially for code meant to be reused by others. Comments should explain the why, not just the what of the code. Self-documenting code with good naming and structure often requires less commenting. Break down code into smaller, well-defined functions and modules. This improves organization, readability, and reusability. Functions should have a single, well-defined purpose. Modules should encapsulate related functionalities. Readability analysis of morphological data. Studies have analyzed the readability of text used in data collection across time in morphology projects. This can be related to fields like admissions or financial information. A longitudinal readability analysis of admissions and financial information, implications for linguistic equity on ResearchGate. Arithmetic readability refers to the ease with which an individual can read and comprehend mathematical expressions and formulas. It assesses the readability of mathematical texts, like equations, formulas, and statements. This includes the use of symbols, the complexity of operators, and the presence of multiple steps or operations. Arithmetic readability is a specific aspect of mathematical literacy and can have implications in fields such as mathematics education, science, engineering, and economics. In morphology, the study of words and their structure, the concept of arithmetic readability could be applied to understand how the structure and forms of words affect their comprehension. For instance, if a word has a complex morphological structure with multiple affixes or roots, it might be more difficult to comprehend and process than a simpler word without these features. Similarly, the number and sequence of operations in a mathematical formula can affect its readability. In the same way, the presence of affixes or complex word structure can make a word harder to understand or compute morphologically. Diachronic studies. These studies focus on changes in celestial longitude over time. Imagine tracking the movement of a specific star across the sky at different points in history. By analyzing historical records or astronomical observations, diachronic studies can reveal shifts in a star's position due to phenomena like precession or proper motion. Synchronic studies, here, the focus is on cross-linguistics at a specific point in time. This could involve comparing the longitudes of different celestial objects observed at the same moment. For instance, a synchronic study might compare the longitudes of the Sun and the Moon during a solar eclipse. Morphological complexity refers to the richness and intricacy of a language's word formation system. Languages with high morphological complexity allow for the creation of many new words by adding prefixes, suffixes, and other bound morphemes, meaningful word parts to existing ones. On the other hand, morphological complexity can also enhance readability by allowing for more precise expression. Suffixes can create subtle variations in meaning, leading to a more nuanced and accurate communication of ideas. The impact also depends on the reader's familiarity with the morphemes used. Readers accustomed to a language's morphological system can readily decode complex words, while those encountering them for the first time might struggle. The overall context of the text plays a role. Technical writing might employ more complex morphology for precise communication, while informal writing might prioritize easily understood words. Morphological complexity itself doesn't determine readability. It's one factor to consider alongside factors like sentence structure, vocabulary level, and the intended audience. Morphology deals with morphemes, the smallest meaning-carrying units in a language. Sometimes, the same morpheme can have different pronunciations depending on the context. This is called allomorphy. Morphophonemic alternations are sound changes that occur specifically at the morpheme level. Morphophonemic rules are the workhorses of morphophonemics, acting like recipes that describe how the sound of a morpheme can change depending on its environment in a word. They bridge the gap between morphology word structure and phonology sound systems. Morphophonemic rules typically follow a format similar to phonological rules, but with a crucial difference: they consider the morphological environment. Phonology studies the sound system of a language and the rules governing how sounds can be combined. Morphology doesn't create random sound changes. Instead, it interacts with the existing phonological rules of a language. For instance, a morphological process might not be allowed to create a sound sequence that's phonologically impossible in that language. An early study on longitude determination might use complex astronomical calculations that are no longer commonly used. A modern re-examination of the same topic would likely explain the concepts in terms of current scientific understanding. An older study might focus heavily on technical details of a specific instrument used for longitude measurement. A modern study might be more interested in the overall impact of longitude measurements on a particular field. Phonological change refers to the way the sounds of a language evolve over time. These changes can happen gradually over centuries or even more rapidly within specific communities. Two distinct sounds in an earlier form of the language can merge into a single sound in the modern language. A sound can disappear entirely from a language. A sound can change its pronunciation. A sound changes to become more similar to a neighboring sound. Phonological change can have a significant impact on the way a language sounds and can even contribute to the development of new languages. For example, the Great Vowel Shift, a series of vowel changes that occurred in English between the 14th and 17th centuries, is a major reason why modern English spelling often doesn't reflect the actual pronunciation of words. Phonological change is a natural and ongoing process in all languages. Chomsky's generative phonology, developed by Noam Chomsky and Morris Halle in the late 1950s, is a theory that explains how humans mentally represent and manipulate the sound systems of languages. Generative phonology proposes that the sounds we hear in speech surface forms are derived from underlying mental representations, deep structures. These deep structures encode the core meaning of a word, and phonological rules operate on them to generate the surface pronunciations we actually hear. Phonological span is a specific type of memory span task that focuses on the ability to hold and recall sequences of speech sounds. It falls under the umbrella of working memory, which is the system responsible for temporary storage and manipulation of information. Temporal readability deals with how easy it is to understand the sequence of events described in a text. It focuses on how clearly the writer uses transition words and phrases to show chronological order, cause and effect, or other temporal relationships. Developmental changes. Researchers can use longitudinal studies to track how children's performance on the RST changes as they develop. This can help us understand how working memory capacity matures and how the RST might be used to assess this development. Adults who learn to read later may face difficulties retaining information compared to those who learned as children. The brain's neural pathways for reading are more flexible and adaptable in children. This plasticity allows for easier formation of strong reading comprehension circuits. Adults might have established learning patterns that differ from those ideal for reading comprehension. While adults have a larger pool of existing knowledge that can sometimes interfere with processing new information from reading. The good news is that adults can still improve their reading retention skills. Active reading engages with the text by highlighting, taking notes, summarizing key points, or discussing it with someone. Relate to prior knowledge, connecting new information to what you already know to solidify understanding. Spaced repetition briefly revisits key points at spaced intervals to strengthen memory consolidation. Working memory theory delves into how we hold and manipulate information for short-term use. It's distinct from simple short-term memory, which focuses on passive storage. Working memory is like a mental workbench where we actively process information. One prominent theory is the multi-component working memory model by Baddeley and Hitch 1974. This model proposes that working memory is not a single pool but rather a system with several components. Central executive, the conductor, allocating attention, and coordinating the other components. A phonological loop deals with sound-based information. Imagine mentally rehearsing a phone number. Visuospatial sketchpad processes visual and spatial information. Think about visualizing a map in your mind. Episodic buffer later addition integrates information from different parts of the system and links it to long-term memory. Decay theory proposes that information in working memory passively decays over time unless it is actively rehearsed. This rehearsal process is thought to refresh the memory trace and prevent it from fading. The just noticeable difference JND, also known as the difference threshold or difference Lyman, is a concept in psychology that refers to the smallest amount of change in a stimulus that a person can detect. It's basically the minimum level of difference you need for something to go from unnoticed to noticeable. JND is the smallest change required for you to notice a difference at least 50% of the time. ND is a statistical concept rather than a fixed value. Researchers typically conduct multiple trials to determine the JND, and the reported value is usually the difference noticeable 50% of the time. JND helps us understand the limitations of human hearing in the context of speech sounds. It tells us the minimum difference in sound features like pitch or formant frequencies that listeners can reliably distinguish. ND can explain why infants are initially sensitive to many sound distinctions but become attuned to the phonemic contrasts of their native language as they develop. Everyone knows what attention is. It is the taking possession by the mind, in clear and vivid form, of one out of what seem several simultaneously possible objects or trains of thought. Focalization, concentration, of consciousness are of its essence. It implies withdrawal from some things in order to deal effectively with others, and is a condition which has a real opposite in the confused, dazed, scatterbrained state which in French is called distraction, and Zerstruthiet in German. William James, phonetic attention refers to the process by which our brains focus on specific sounds within speech. It's a crucial aspect of speech perception, allowing us to understand spoken language despite variations and background noise. Imagine being at a party with multiple conversations happening simultaneously. Phonetic attention allows you to focus on one specific conversation, attend to its sounds while filtering out the background noise and other conversations. Our auditory system receives a constant stream of sounds, but attention helps us prioritize the relevant ones, specifically the speech sounds that carry meaning. Attention restoration theory art, developed by Stephen and Rachel Kaplan in the late 1980s, proposes that spending time in nature can replenish our ability to focus and concentrate. Our capacity for directed attention is like a battery that gets depleted by mentally demanding tasks. Art suggests that exposure to natural environments allows our attention to recover in a way that non-natural environments often don't. Habituation paradigms, these measure how long an infant looks at a novel stimulus compared to a familiar one. This can indicate an early form of selective attention. Flanker tasks, participants identify a central target letter e.g. H surrounded by distracting letters e.g. HHHH or SHSH. Reaction time and accuracy differences between congruent distractors match target and incongruent distractors differ from target conditions provide insights into attention filtering. Phonetics studies the physical properties of speech sounds, analyzing them through their acoustic waveform characteristics. Think of it like a visual representation of sound waves. The speech-to-non-speech test is a method used in acoustic phonetics to determine the boundary between speech and non-speech, such as silence or noise, based on acoustic waveform characteristics. It helps identify the points where phonetic segments begin and end. Identifying the boundary between speech and non-speech elements is crucial. Speech is made up of specific sounds phonemes, whereas non-speech could be silence, background noise, or even coughs or laughter. Knowing where these boundaries lie helps researchers and phonetic eons segment speech into its individual sounds phonemes, which are the building blocks of spoken language. Energy detection measures the intensity loudness of the sound wave. Speech generally has higher energy than silence, so sudden changes in energy can indicate speech onset and offset. Zero crossing rate analyzes how often the sound wave crosses the 0 point, neither positive nor negative pressure. Speech has a higher zero crossing rate than silence. Corsi block tapping test, this test uses 9 colored blocks arranged on a board. The examiner taps a sequence of blocks in a specific order, and the participant must replicate the sequence by tapping the blocks in the same order. The number of blocks successfully tapped correctly reflects the memory span matrix span test. This test involves a matrix with different patterns or shapes in each cell. The examiner taps a sequence of cells, and the participant must point to the tapped cells in the correct order after the sequence is complete. Object location span test. This test presents a tray with various objects. The examiner reveals the objects for a short time, then covers them. The participant must then recall the location of each object on the tray. Pattern recognition memory. This test shows the participant a series of increasingly complex visual patterns for a brief period. Afterward, the participant is presented with multiple versions of the patterns, including some that were shown and some that weren't. They must identify the original patterns they saw. The reading span task RST is a classic tool used to assess verbal working memory. It gauges how much verbal information someone can hold in their working memory while simultaneously processing new information. Essentially, it tests the ability to juggle two things at once, remembering previously encountered information and comprehending new information sentences being presented. It's considered a complex span task because it combines storage remembering words and processing understanding. This differentiates it from simple span tasks that only involve remembering a series of items. There can be variations on the original format, such as listening instead of reading, or requiring judgments about the sentences if they make sense instead of simple recall. Non-linguistic readability span is the maximum amount of nonverbal information an individual can accurately perceive, process, and retain in their working memory for a short period. This definition captures the essence of what we're looking for, the ability to handle a series of visual or spatial elements, similar to how reading involves processing a sequence of words. Conclusion. The symbol is definitely not my invention. It appeared in popular magazines, not mathematical ones, before I adopted it, but, once again, I seem to have introduced it into mathematics. It is the symbol that sometimes looks like, and is used to indicate an end, usually the end of a proof. It is most frequently called the tombstone, but at least one generous author referred to it as the Halmas. Paul Halmas. The fountain of youth is a well-known mythical concept associated with eternal life or regaining youth. This reference can pique the reader's curiosity and draw them into your text, especially if the topic is related to aging, health, or beauty. The idea of eternal youth or reversing aging is a powerful motivator for many people. Using this phrase can tap into those desires and create an emotional connection with the reader. This can be particularly effective in marketing or persuasive writing. Fountain of youth is a metaphor, a figure of speech comparing something to something else that it isn't literally. This can make your writing more vivid and engaging, particularly if you elaborate on the metaphor in your text. But people with different sensory intelligence preferences might have varying preferences for reading materials. Nostalgia taps into familiar experiences and references, creating a sense of comfort and ease for the reader. This can make complex information more approachable. Miller's magic number 7 ± 2, proposed by George Miller in 1956, refers to the idea that the average human can hold and manipulate about 7 chunks of information in their short-term memory at a time. This concept has significant implications for readability. Sentences that are too long, more than 7 to 10 chunks, can overload the reader's short-term memory, making it difficult to follow the meaning and remember key points. Packing too much information into a single sentence or paragraph can exceed the capacity of working memory. Breaking down complex ideas into smaller, more manageable chunks aligns better with Miller's limit and improves readability. Readers don't process information word by word, but rather in meaningful groups, chunks based on their knowledge and context. Using clear and concise language, familiar terms, and logical sentence structure can help readers form these chunks more easily, improving comprehension. In fields like computer vision or machine learning, algorithms might be used to identify the most important elements in an image or data set. Here, salience reliability would ask if the algorithm consistently identifies the same features as salient when applied to similar data multiple times or with slightly different parameters. In psychology research, salience reliability might refer to the consistency of methods for identifying important stimuli in an experiment. For example, if a specific task consistently leads participants to focus on a particular aspect of a situation, the task could be considered to have good salience reliability. In research, you might have a reliable measure, but it might not be very informative or relevant to the question you're trying to answer. Salience reliability, in this case, would ask if a consistently measured variable is also a good indicator of the underlying concept you're interested in. Non-linguistic readability focuses on the physical presentation of the text, while pragmatic readability considers how well the text is adapted to its audience and purpose. They often work together. For example, using bullet points, non-linguistic can improve pragmatic readability by making it easier for readers to skim and find specific information. Evolutionary dictionary theory would look at how dictionaries themselves evolve alongside language. It would explore how new words are added, definitions are changed, and entries become obsolete based on societal changes, technological advancements, and cultural shifts. It could propose frameworks or guidelines for dictionaries to adapt and remain relevant in the face of a constantly evolving language. The impact of technology and social media on language creation and usage. The role of dictionaries in codifying or resisting language change. Methods for dictionaries to reflect the diversity of language use across cultures and regions. Strategies for incorporating new words and slang while maintaining clarity and accuracy. References and citations. Ruth, M. 1992. March. Ellipsis redundancy and reduction redundancy. In Proceedings of the Stuttgart Ellipsis Workshop Volume 29, pages 1 to 26. Belan, A. and Grafstein, A. 2001. The Linguistic Assumptions Underlying Readability Formulae, A Critique. Language and Communication, 21-3. 285 to 301. Fajardo, I. Avila, V. Ferrer, A. Tavares, G. Gomez, M. and Hernandez, A. 2014. Easy-to-read texts for students with intellectual disability, linguistic factors affecting comprehension. Journal of Applied Research in Intellectual Disabilities, 27-3. 212 to 225. Lee, B. W. Zhang, Y. S. and Lee, J. H. J. 2021. Pushing on Text Readability Assessment, a Transformer Meets Handcrafted Linguistic Features. AR14 Preprint AR14 2109.12258. Wang, S. Liu, X. and Zhou, J. 2022. Readability is decreasing in language and linguistics. Scientometrics, 127-8, 4697-4729. Hovius, A.S. and O'Connor, B.C. 2023. The Reader as Subjective Entropy, a Novel Analysis of Multimodal Readability. Journal of Documentation, 79-2, 415-430. Zheng, J. Tong, X.U., X. Xiao, W. and Huang, Q. 2024, March. Interpretara, enhancing hybrid automatic readability assessment with linguistic feature interpreter and contrastive learning. In Proceedings of the AAAI Conference on Artificial Intelligence Volume 38, Number 17, pages 19,497 to 19,505.
Taxing the mind like a puzzle unsolved, reading the war with the meaning devolved, the cryptic path through the haze of the lore. Beauty fades, but wisdom's the score. Age before beauty, its clarity's reign. Explain the story, don't make it arcane. Truth in the lines where simplicity shines. A battle of wits in these taxing confines. Interpret the shadows, but what do they say? Explain it outright, don't lead us astray. A mirror of words that distorts as it bends, lost in translation, where meaning descends. Age before beauty, its clarity's reign. Explain the story, don't make it arcane. Truth in the lines where simplicity shines. A battle of wits in these taxing confines. Age before beauty, its clarity's reign. Explain the story, don't make it arcane. Truth in the lines where simplicity shines. A battle of wits in these taxing confines. Let the clouds part, where the sun meets the page. Turn the key softly and step off the stage. The wars of the word where the sharp minds collide. Interpret or explain, the choice won't hide. Age is the beacon where wisdom aligns. Beauty's a fleeting mask time redesigns. Through the trenches of thought where battles are fought, clarity conquers what beauty forgot. Interpret the shadows, but what do they say? Explain it outright, don't lead us astray. A mirror of words that distorts as it bends, lost in translation, where meaning descends. Let the clouds part where the sun meets the page. Turn the key softly and step off the stage. The wars of the word where the sharp minds collide. Interpret or explain, the choice won't hide. Let the clouds part where the sun meets the page. Turn the key softly and step off the stage. The wars of the word where the sharp minds collide. Interpret or explain, the choice won't hide. Age is the beacon where wisdom aligns. Beauty's a fleeting mask time redesigns. Through the trenches of thought where battles are fought, clarity conquers what beauty forgot.